there are so many amazing things happening in Jacksonville, and one of them is right here at the Jumbo Shrimp Stadium. All the construction taking place. Ken Babby is an amazing guy that's come to Jacksonville and has brought so many great ideas, and the ideas he has to make family fun entertainment here in the community. We thought we'd come shoot here today.
Yeah.
Got a great guest. I'm super excited about it.
Me too. What a privilege to be here, and I'm looking forward to speaking with our guest, a good friend of both of ours. So I think our audience is going to appreciate her as well.
So you have a big day last week?
I had a milestone. Yeah, I had a birthday. I celebrated a birthday over the weekend, so turned 51.
51.
Yeah.
Dude, can you believe back in 8th grade that we would still be sitting here when
Pretty crazy.
we're in our 50s?
Pretty crazy.
It is pretty insane, but nobody would have ever believed it, and I'm pretty glad it's still here, though.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what was the best present you received, and what did you do for your birthday?
So for my birthday, went to Savannah, just right up the road. Stayed at the JW Marriott that's on the water.
About it. I heard that's pretty amazing.
The River District.
Yeah.
Highly recommend that. So cool spot with lots of restaurants, ate some good food, just hung out, rested a little bit. Didn't party too hard. It was the day after St. Patrick's Day.
All right.
So you can imagine how wild it gets down there. So people were still recovering, and they were cleaning up after.
Like a ghost town.
Yeah. So it was good to be there at that time. And then just hung out and had a good weekend.
So you got a pretty special gift, I heard. What's up
I
with
did,
that?
yeah. So I entered the Whoop gang.
All right,
and got my bracelet. And so I know we talked about it briefly.
Sleep? Tell me about sleep.
Well, I mean, do you really want me to tell you? Because I think on the sleep level with Whoop, I think I may have exceeded your best sleep night. So five hours of deep sleep.
That's crazy.
Is that good?
I've never even heard of that. The most I've ever had was 2 hours in a night.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's pretty insane.
I excel when it comes to sleep.
Maybe that's why you look so young.
That I don't know. Maybe. But excited to see what all this can help me with as far as health is concerned. And I know we talked about it a few episodes back, but for people who don't know what Whoop is, like, give them a quick overview.
Yeah, just a way to measure your activities during the day, your recovery as your sleep, and the ways that you can eat better, exercise, and just recover quicker.
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty cool way to have a metric.
For me, as you know, it's accountability that I resisted.
Yeah.
Until you and another coworker of ours, Kelly, bought me one for my birthday, and so now I have to wear it.
Right.
But I'm in the gang. I'm in the Whoop gang, so I'm looking forward to having that accountability in my life.
So Rebecca has been in Africa for 3 weeks, visiting Caroline, who's in language school. And, so our house is not quite a disaster, but it's not where it should be.
Yeah.
And the dishwashers, we have 2. And they're full of every dish and every glass. And we've been drinking out of paper cups because nobody has. I started them before I left this morning, but we'll try to get. Rebecca's about to land in Jacksonville, so we're pretty excited to see her. Yeah, and I got to tell you, so many of my friends have been concerned about Gabe and me and us not being able to run the house the right way, keeping the dogs alive and the plants alive,
staying fed.
Yeah, and so our guest today was very concerned about us not having a home cooked meal, and so she invited us over last night and made the most amazing steaks. She and her husband John were so nice to us, and Gabe really enjoyed his time. So a little bit about our guest. She is legal counsel at Florida Blue. She's served on almost every board in the city of Jacksonville. But the most important thing that I think about Ari Jolly is the fact that she has chosen to serve at the Jax Chamber. And this year she's our chair of the chamber, and all of her great ideas on how we can make Jacksonville a better place. I'm looking forward to hearing that. And I know you know her, so it's not like you're going to learn a lot of new things, but I think the conversation for all the viewers is going to be really good.
I've been looking forward to this one.
All right, so Ari, why don't you come on up? It's so good to see you.
Same. It's been 12 hours, right?
12, yeah. I hope Gabe behaved himself at the house last night. We were able to throw the Frisbees to the dogs, and one of the dogs caught the Frisbee and jumped in the water at the same time in the pool. It was pretty amazing.
Well, they appreciated having an audience.
Yeah.
Gabe was lovely. You have wonderful children. You've done
you.
a great job, you and Rebecca.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm proud of all of them, and I love to show them off with people I get a chance to work with.
I told Danielle last night, there's nothing that makes a cook happier than when somebody actually not only eats but devours the food.
And that happened. And then she actually got me to eat dessert.
Oh,
so,
wow.
That
what was the special?
It was really,
dessert?
really good.
It was just, knowing what healthy, what habits you have. I made sure it was just fruit, a little bit of whipped cream and a little bit of granola, but it was very healthy.
It's hard to beat.
Yeah, it was really good. So something that's not healthy, we have some nice drinks for us today. Thanks to Manifest Distilling. And I wanted to make sure we got a cheers before we get started. I know TJ mentioned Kelly Porcio. She got you hooked on espresso martinis on some of the chamber trips, and now you're enjoying those. So Jim over at Manifest made that for you.
I up until my time on the chamber, I pretty much didn't drink anything. Yeah, I am a bad German. I never developed a palate for either wine or beer. And I think it served me well. Most of you both know that I'm fairly unfiltered in what comes out of my mouth.
Which is perfect for this podcast.
Actually, the show is meant to have
the tag name is Unfiltered Story.
And I think, God, he, she, whoever, knew what he was doing when they didn't give me a palate for alcohol, But Kelly, of course, decided to introduce me to these espresso martinis. And there's usually at least once a week or more a picture of me drinking an espresso martini. Just one, but I'm enjoying them.
Well, that may be the only bad influence that the chamber can bring to Jacksonville.
It has helped to. I feel a little bit more cultured when we're in certain settings. So.
Well, it's good. Well, we have really, really enjoyed having you lead our organization. And
I appreciate it.
I remember driving over the Matthews Bridge, and I see a huge billboard of you on the bridge as a proud JU graduate, and they're so proud of you too. And I think you've chaired just about every important board in our community. So.
Well, JU is, I immigrated to the States in 1974. By that point in time, I'd lived in 3 continents, in my 13 years. And we moved to Jacksonville. My mother had married an American Air Force officer, second marriage, and he was kind enough to pack her up, her 2 kids, her mother, and my baby brother, and bring us all to Jacksonville. And then 4 or 5 years later, I had the opportunity to attend JU. And I've told President Costas, JU in every meaningful way launched me on the path that ultimately led me to you. I got a great education. I was able to enroll in the ROTC program. I became a commissioned officer after I graduated. Served in the Navy for 9 years. But the camaraderie, the training, the sense of relevance, the critical thinking that the military instills in you, I think has been hugely influential and beneficial to me in my professional career.
Of course it has.
Ari, I was just going to say, she's so involved with the community. Every time we have an event or every time I go to an event, I see you there. And I wonder what developed that passion in you for the Jacksonville community, because you, like Daniel mentioned, you serve on so many boards. You've been a part of different nonprofits, even in volunteer capacities. We have something in common with the Dancing with the Stars thing, and you were involved with that. Even that was last season, right? And so what has developed this love and passion for getting involved with the community? How did you come about that?
Well, I will answer that, but before I do, anybody who hasn't already done so, I encourage you to go to the JCC website and vote for TJ Ward. He's going to be awesome. I've seen him do this incredible lift with his partner, and I can't wait to see you dance. And I predict you'll take home the trophy.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your support with that. I know you donated, and I really appreciate that. RiverCityDWTS.com
That's right.
is the website. But thank you for mentioning that.
So it's my involvement, I think, has been fueled by the same thing that sort of pushed me into serving in the military. I've always been really grateful to this country. When we moved here, the opportunities I've had in the United States, especially as a woman, have been second to none anywhere else. And I've always been really grateful for that. And I've loved Jacksonville. Jacksonville took us in. They've embraced me and my family. I've married a boy from Jacksonville.
Oh.
I've raised my children here. I think this is an amazing city, and for so long, I think it has been just on the cusp of what it could be. And so, with your help, I think we're past that point. I think we're about to see the flourishing of Jacksonville, and it has meant a lot to me in whatever capacity I could to be somewhat, make a little bit of a difference. Whether it's with transportation or the arts, or public policy, or even the care and nurturing of our retirees, and the military. Anything that I could do that would help advance the ball a little bit. It's been my honor.
So why don't you back up a little bit, because obviously you have a little bit of an accent, and I think that the people in Jacksonville would love to know your story. Where did it start out, and what was your pathway to the United States?
So it doesn't sound Southern to you? My husband said, whatever you do on this podcast, do not try to feign a Southern accent because you suck at it. So
the one time you told me that you sounded like a female Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That was the perfect, that's the perfect description.
My father was Iranian, and like many Iranians pre-revolution, he studied abroad. He was in Germany. He met my mother, and they got married. And when I was a year old, we moved to Iran, and I spent the next 9 years in Tehran, again, pre-revolution.
What was that like? Because I think we all have a picture of what Tehran is like now, but I hear the most beautiful stories about this place.
I have to tell you, it is. There's a heartache that I feel. I've felt it for the last 45 years. I feel it, when I think about the possibility that my children may never see the country that I grew up in. Pre-revolution, Iran was basically the London of the Middle East. The women in my family, arguably, I was very lucky. I was a upper middle class, affluent family, and so my father, my aunts and uncles, they all were educated abroad, but they came back to Iran, and even the women in my family were executives at international companies. We were Western clothes. If you look at pictures of us in the 60s, you would think we were anywhere in the United States or in Europe, mini skirts, bikinis, Western clothes. There were no limitations on the opportunities that women had. And so in 1979, all of that changed, obviously. And I can't go back, at this point in time. I hope that changes someday, but,
It's sad. I mean, it really is, because I've heard those stories as well, and I just wish it wasn't like that. I'm glad that we can still be a beacon of freedom here that can show the world.
I think it's really lovely that most people are able to make the difference between the people of Iran and the government of Iran.
Right.
Because the people of Iran are kind, smart. You will experience, the utmost hospitality when you walk into a Persian house. But that's the people, not the government.
So then you were in Tehran till 9, and then what?
My parents, in the meantime, my Iranian father and my German mother divorced, and she eventually left Iran, was able to secure she had to have his permission because it still is a patriarchal society. So she was able to get his permission for us to leave and go to Germany. And when she arrived in Germany, she eventually met an Air Force officer. We were living in Kaiserslautern, which is outside Ramstein Air Force Base. And she met my stepfather, and they began a 45-year, an amazing love affair, and so they got married, had my baby brother, and eventually he got out of the service and packed us all up and brought us to Jacksonville.
A couple of times we've been on economic development missions in Europe, and we would come across companies that their executives spoke German, and it was pretty cool to see Ari jump right into it in the conversation. And I knew she was pitching Jacksonville in German, so it was kind of fortuitous that you had that opportunity.
How many languages do you speak?
3, but my Farsi is pretty broken, so but the
mine is too.
Mine is not existent.
I stumble a little bit, but I can pick up.
You can pick it up volley.
Yeah.
Well, I was lucky enough to be invited. We have Baptist has a wonderful neurosurgery department. 3 of its top neurosurgeons are foreign. There's Dr. Hanel from Brazil, Dr. Nima from Iran. He was born in Iran. And then Dr. Savageau from Canada. And Dr. Nima was kind enough to basically arrange a mommy play date for me a couple of weeks ago. His mom is moved here now. She's about the same age, and he wants her to meet other people in the community. And so he arranged for me and her to get together, and she cooked some Persian food. It was amazing. So last night when Danielle came over, there's a Persian rice dish called jeweled rice, and I made that for Danielle and Gabe.
Yeah, it was delicious, but it was pretty good. So you in Germany, and then he finished his service to the country and moved to Jacksonville at that point. Go ahead.
Well, they imported a pool chemical business, and so obviously Jacksonville was perfect.
Yeah.
It has a port, can bring in the chemicals, and there's no state. I don't know if there's a state with more pools. Maybe Texas, but
You mentioned at the Jacksonville Women's Business celebration that we had the other day when you spoke about your mom being a serial entrepreneur. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you remember?
She passed away 9 years ago. It was 9 years ago. It was a pretty rough year because I was going through my breast cancer treatment, and she passed away. So that's the year that we shall forget. But she was just a very dynamic woman. She was stunningly beautiful. Very smart, very driven, and she and my father were they loved, they had the courage and the passion to pursue different business ideas. Unfortunately, they didn't necessarily always have the business acumen to get there or the financial backing. And so there were probably more business failures and, as we were growing up than successes. But I admired the courage. I admired the fact that they just didn't give up. They kept going and
taking
going.
risks.
And that resilience and that resolve, I think it really did resonate with every one of the kids. My sister, my brother, and I, oftentimes if you are in a family where there's economic upheaval, it can lead to bad results. But I can tell you that all 3 of the kids, including my stepsister, all of us have had impactful, I think, and honorable careers. So, and that's because we learn by example.
Do you say your siblings are as driven as you are? Because you are, like I said, you're everywhere and you're doing a lot of amazing things. You've received that drive from watching your parents, take the risks that they did over and over again. Are your siblings kind of like that too? Do y'all have similar personalities?
They are, and actually there's 7 of us. So my biological father, we found out, was fairly liberal with his seed, and he has spawned.
That's one way to say it, right?
So he spawned, I discovered that I had other siblings, and I've gotten to know them. And
you got to wait, hold on a second. Okay. How did you meet the siblings that are all out there?
So I learned after we left Iran at some point that he had remarried, and he had, I had a half sister and a half brother over there. But sometime between my mother and his second marriage, there may have been a dalliance, and that produced another half sister. So now I have a half sister in Barcelona. I have a half sister in Vienna. I have a half brother in Iran. Then I have a brother on the West Coast. I have a sister in Charlotte, and I have a sister in Virginia. So we're geographically...
Wow. Those are all great places to travel to.
They're great places. But they really are just unbelievably wonderul people. We are so lucky to be in each other's lives, even if some of it came late in the game. And I'm huge fans and admirers of them, of theirs. They add something to the communities in which they live. They're smart, honorable, decent people.
Yeah, and that's a great description of you, I would say. Yeah, I've gotten to know you over the last couple of years, and especially in our trip to London with the Jaguars games. And you're not only are you all those things, but you are a blast to be around. You are a lot of fun. I think that's how most people that know you would describe you, driven and obviously.
She tries to embarrass me. Is what she tries to do. She knows she knows that she can get me. Yeah, and I tell you, it's a fun adventure. I can say that.
Yeah,
I so vividly recall in London, and you started this. So I'm not going to name the public official, but I remember us taking this great picture of you, Daniel, and I, and we each thought it would be great to share that picture with our very good friend, the lovely Kelly.
Yes.
And so my mistake was that I tried to send her that picture in a taxi cab without my glasses on, after maybe having had one or two martinis. And so about 30 minutes later, Daniel sends me a text, and he says, Ari, why did you send that picture to this
You can say it.
Yeah.
You can say it.
to our sheriff, TK Waters? And I said, oh, shit. Just like, I had looked and sure. I mean,
I guess I kept going through, okay, TJ,
Waters, Ward.
Yeah,
I mean, it's similar.
But
It's
what
really
made
similar.
it so awkward, what made it even more embarrassing is that when I sent the picture, the tagline was "Miss you," and I've spoken and communicated with the sheriff on business issues once or twice. But I guarantee you, he would not expect a text from me from London saying,
At 2 a.m.
miss you.
Because of the time difference.
Right.
It was a very reasonable time in London, but it definitely was middle of the night here.
And that was just one of many fun stories
That's
that
so
we
much
could
fun.
tell.
Yeah.
Probably the only story we could tell, honestly, on this podcast, even though we are unfiltered.
Yeah.
We can cut the extra. So back on your story, because I think everybody in Jacksonville wants to know it. So you finished up at JU and you had a chance to serve our country. Can you talk, or is that the timeline?
Yeah. No. So the day I graduated from JU, Tim Cost graduated the year before, 2 years before, and then I graduated from JU. And the day I graduated, I became a commissioned officer in the Navy. And I was originally I had worked really hard to qualify to go to flight school. It had been my dream to be an aviator. And then beyond, I was watching our astronauts land yesterday, and that had been somewhere in the back of my mind. But so I had soloed at 16. I'd gone to Embry-Riddle to solo. I got my gold wings when I was a junior in college. I graduated first in my class. I did everything that I could to qualify to go to flight school. And before you're selected, you have to pass the physicals, and I'd passed the physical. I get down to flight school, and at the time, women were still not allowed to operate in a wartime theater. We were not allowed in combat. And there were a lot of places they could put women in aviation. So I have to believe that was one of the motivators for what happened next, which was that during my physical, the flight surgeon said that I was 1/12 of an inch too short in my buttocks to knee length. Basically, I didn't have enough fat in my ass, but I had complete functional reach, and so I was like,
I've never been accused of that, by the way, but
I have not checked out your ass, so I can't speak to that.
But I have a few times. It's just a lot of muscle back there.
Oh, geez. We're off the rails at this point.
It's unfiltered stories. This is the most unfiltered we've been, I think.
Well, I was sitting there and I was looking at some lovely people around me, in that class who had 2.5 averages or 2.8, and I was like, are you seriously going to MPQ me for 1/12 of an inch when, I've got all these other, and I had functional reach again. So anyway, I appealed it, and eventually the ruling was overturned, and I was told I could go back to flight school. But by that point in time, I did have a more mature understanding of what my options were. I was never going to fly jets, and not at that time. And I didn't necessarily want to, as much as I am, in awe of I helicopter and P3 pilots, that's not what I wanted to fly. So I kind of pivoted. I was told that I could select any duty station that I wanted. And by that point in time, I'd started to see my now husband. So I selected Jacksonville, and I was assigned to VP30, which, if you don't know, is a training squadron for P3s on the East Coast, largest training squadron. And I was had a wonderful time serving with that squadron for 4 years. And then I got out. I remained a reservist, which meant that I drilled every month, but then I attended law school because my second love, other than aviation, was the American language. I fell in love with the American language when we came to the States. We didn't speak, we had learned a little bit of English in the German school, but we didn't speak English. But I just thought the American language was fascinating to me. I was that nerd that sat on the bus and I was reading the dictionary. So
it sounds like my daughter Caroline, because she loves language.
Yep.
And that's where she's headed as well. And I can see she just spends all the time on the apps now, helping learn.
But she's learning Swahili, right?
Yeah, Swahili. She's
That's
fluent now.
That's a little harder than
English, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So, John, her husband, former
Great guy.
state attorney, general counsel at the city of Jacksonville, confidant to former mayor John Delaney. He also makes a pretty incredible steak. And tell us how you met John.
So just before my senior year at JU, because I was looking at scholarships and grants to go to school, and JU was very good to me. But that first semester of my senior year, I had a grant that didn't fall through. I also told President Cost that he's directly responsible, or JU is directly responsible for me meeting my husband, because I had to figure out some way to make up that money. And that summer, there was a new restaurant in town that had opened up. And it basically was the precursor to Hooters. And the name of the restaurant was Joanne's Chili Bordello. And the theme was that you had young ladies dressed in bordello corsets with fishnet stockings. And the restaurant served 13 types of chili, different spicing spice levels in cantaloupes, with the inside of the cantaloupe as a side to help with the heat of the chili. So the restaurant became hugely popular. I think Good Morning America or Today's Show, as somebody came down, because it was a really interesting concept. Anyway, they had a job opening, and Joanne, who was the madam, hired me. And one day, John and some of his friends came in, and I was their waitress. So,
and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah.
I want to ask so many questions, and I think I'm going to move to another subject. I just think that it would have been interesting to get a chance to talk to Ari Jolly back in the day.
Well, my accent was so much thicker back then, and there were so many American, colloquialisms.
Yeah.
That I just didn't understand, So most of the time I walked around like a deer. I had that deer in the headlight thing, because people would laugh at something, and I knew it was funny, but I wasn't quite sure why it was funny. Right. So we had this group of submariners from St. Mary's who came in for lunch, and one of the gentlemen was follically challenged. And so he was like, I think he was flirting. So he said, do you know why I'm bald? And I said, no, sir. And he said, that's because I'm really good at U-turns under the sheets. And I'm sitting there thinking, I know we were practicing military maneuvers. I mean, we were studying military maneuvers in one of my ROTC classes, but I'd never heard about U-turns under the sheets, and I was just so... and of course they realized my confusion and thought it was fun.
And you didn't have Google at that point, to where
you
didn't
have
just
Google.
go on your phone and
so
try to figure it out.
I actually went back to the madam and I said, I know I'm missing something. They were talking about this particular maneuver, and she said, Ari,
let me educate you a little bit.
Well, I'm glad you graduated from the Chili Bordello restaurant, because I think that we will talk about in a couple of minutes about your hardest job that you've ever had. And so I'm excited about hearing about that.
But let me say this, I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was the founder of Apple. There's no job that's a bad job. There's a job, we've all done jobs, that helped us grow as individuals and helped us advance the ball and get to where we needed to go. And, it was... that was a good job. It led me to my husband, and it taught me some colloquialisms that
Beautiful
I didn't know.
kids. You learn
Yep.
all the colloquialisms
Yep.
from the Submariners.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing.
Yep.
You guys love to travel.
Yes.
And you're wearing a beautiful, I think did you get this from Greece?
I did. No, Italy. This was Italy,
Italy.
actually, yeah.
So Rebecca and I love to travel as well. And you've helped us in some of our travel and where to go and what to see. What are some of the most memorable places you and John have gone to or taken the kids? And do you have any memorable stories?
We started taking the kids very early on. I just wanted them. I think travel opens your eyes to the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
It definitely helps you come back here and appreciate what we have in America. It was really important to me for the kids to see the world and help not only have empathy for the rest of the world, but also be appreciative for what they have here. So we've traveled ever since Jack was, we've taken them abroad ever since Jack was 5 and Chandler was 8. But I think probably one of my favorite memories is we were in Dubrovnik, and right outside of Dubrovnik, there's a little island. You can get to it by ferry. And we gotten there and had a wonderful day, but we were getting ready. We had to catch the last ferry back. Jack is absolutely going to kill me when I tell you this. Oh my gosh. But anyway, it's a great story. So, my son does not move fast. He does not have a fast bone in his body. He does everything in a very measured, deliberate way.
Even keel.
Yeah. But I had said to him at the time he was 8, I said, Jackie, we need to catch this last ferry, so you need to get out of your bathing suit and into your dry clothes. At which point he stripped and he was standing there naked on the piece of rock when a tour boat came across, came around the corner. People are taking pictures.
Yeah.
I have never seen my son move so fast.
That's awesome.
He dropped, pulled over the blanket. And he said, he was just so happy that he thought at least he had avoided disaster, except that there was an English newspaper at the time that was circulated in Dubrovnik, and it asked guests to share, their most memorable moments in Dubrovnik. And of course, I felt that I should share that experience with them, so I submitted it. I don't think it ever was published, but I did submit it.
John was telling us a story last night about they went horseback riding in
Honduras.
Mm-hmm. And up to the top of the mountain. And then when you come down, the finale of the ride was to take the horses through the ocean in the water, and sounds pretty amazing because the water is incredible. And tell that story, because Gabe was absolutely captivated, and I'll give a little color commentary while she's telling that story.
So it was a lovely excursion. We were at the top of the mountain. We start going down, and at some point the horse got spooked, and it threw my husband off, and he landed on a rock, and it was a pretty hard fall. He was pretty banged up. They called somebody over. They called him doctor. We later saw him renting kayaks on the beach. So we don't think he was a medical doctor. He brought over a first aid kit that literally had an inch of dust on it. So I don't think it had been, needed to be used anytime soon. And he declared that all John needed was to walk into the cold water and, just kind of, he would be just fine. Later, after the cruise, so the rest of the cruise, my husband is literally sliding out of the bed, and, there's all this moaning and groaning, which, of course, I and the kids thought was highly exaggerated, and it was just an attempt for sympathy.
Which he didn't get much of from you, right?
He didn't get any of it, But we when we got home, the day we got home, we stopped at an urgent care clinic. They did an X-ray of his back, and he ended up having 6 broken bones, in his lower back, and 2 broken ribs,
That's quite the I told you so.
He told us last night that he looked at her and did the I told you so.
He might have done a little this, and I will be forever. I mean, I am crestfallen that I, was so mean to him. But.
So I had did not win the Father of the Year award. I didn't tell you the story last night, but Christian was, he's large now, but he was smaller, playing Pop Warner football. And they were doing a drill, and he came out of the drill holding his hand. He had unclipped his chin strap and took his helmet off, and he was standing off to the side holding his arm. And I walked over to him. I said, "Put your helmet back on," because we grew up the same way you did, where you go, "Bro,
suck it up,
get in,
get
back in the game." And I said, "There's two things that are going to happen. One, you're going to put your helmet on. You're going to get back in line. Or two, we're going to go to the emergency room. Which one's it going to be?" And he didn't use this arm to buckle it up, but he got back in line. And get home that night, take a shower, get in bed, and Rebecca goes, "I've been watching, and he's not using his right hand." And I said, "Oh, he's gonna be fine. We'll figure it out." And the next day, the entire day, the teacher said that he was writing with his left hand. He wasn't using his right hand, and he didn't complain, because it was like, there's two options here, And the next thing, Rebecca goes, "I think we probably ought to get this checked out." And he had broken his wrist. And I made him go 2 days before he went to the emergency room. And so that night, he had how the kids have their poster board project thing. And I said, "Hey, buddy, I know you're having a hard time writing. I'm more than happy I'll write it out. You tell me what you want, and I'm going to help you, because I know," I said, "And the other thing I want to tell you, I'm really sorry." And he goes, "Dad, I've been waiting for 48 hours for you to apologize to me." And I was just like, "Yeah, I'm not going to win the award this year."
No, I don't know. You said you're sorry. You did. I think that there's a point where things can become dangerous, but he did manage through it. And so
we had a rule that if you weren't bleeding, you're okay, get back out there. And so
I didn't have any of those experiences, because I have 2 daughters, and so they were just princesses the whole time they grew up. And
you are such a loving father. I love seeing the pictures of you with your daughters. It comes through how proud you are of them. And one of them is engaged.
Yes,
congratulations.
My oldest is engaged and getting married in October. So that's a new journey for all of us, but it's going really well. And I like the guy that she's marrying, the only guy that she's ever dated that I've liked. I told her that. So I'm glad none of the other ones worked out, and this is the one.
We ask all of our guests, most everybody has a photo that they would like to share or talk about. And I didn't know if you were able to bring.
Are we sure we want to do this with Ari?
So did you bring any pictures in? And
I did. I have 2.
Have you seen this ahead of time?
No.
Okay.
So I'm going to. So the first one is this.
Oh, wow.
And this is when I was first frocked. I got my lieutenant bars frocked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure
it's a pinning ceremony.
How old were you then?
Was that?
Oh gosh, this was probably 1986, 1985. Yeah. But it was unexpected. We were standing in formation, and
So what does frocking mean?
It means you get, it's your rank is attached to your uniform. You get, so I went from being a lieutenant JG to a full lieutenant. So lieutenant junior grade to a full lieutenant. And but it was just a moment of
memory that you'll never forget.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
But and then I think the other one, and this goes hand in hand with what happened in London, is let's see if I can.
I don't know what she's about. Yeah.
It's just.
See,
Do we want to know the story behind this one?
That is how I imagine you living your entire life, right there in the bubble bath with the leopard skin glasses on.
So I think everyone needs one or two people in their lives that are there. I've had a really shitty day and I need to talk kind of person. I think you guys are probably that for one another. Yeah. My sister Christine is that for me. And we have a code. If I'm in the bath with bubbles everywhere, I send a picture to her that's code for, I need to talk. I just need to get a sort of an emotional cleansing here. And this picture I took, I sent it to her, and usually within 30 seconds, I hear back from her. This was on a Saturday night, and I didn't hear from her. Sunday morning, I still hadn't heard from her, and I was more concerned about at this point for her because she's so responsive. So I look at the text again, and much like with Sheriff Waters and you, I had tried to send it to Chris, K-R. It ended up going to Katie. Katie is this amazing consummate professional who is the board governance support at the JTA.
Okay.
And at the time, I was the chairman of the JTA. So think about Katie sitting in her house Saturday night, and the chairman of the board sends her a picture of herself in the bathtub with bubbles everywhere. So I called Katie Sunday morning, and I said, Katie, did you get a picture from me last night? And Katie, again, being consummate, yes, she always would say, never called me Ari. She said, yes, Chairman Jolly, I did. And I was wondering what you would like me to do with it.
Delete. She was probably thinking about that all night, trying to figure it out.
And one of the moments of levity that she just was unexpected. I said, Katie, I'd really like for you to delete the picture and just let's pretend you never saw this, And she said, well, Chairman Jolly, I actually thought about using it as the cover of your book when your chairmanship term expires. JTA always presents you with a book of what was accomplished during your time. And she said, I thought about putting it on the cover of the book, which she didn't do. But
that would be on brand for sure, though.
Yeah.
Wow. So we haven't even talked about Florida Blue. And I want to make sure we get an opportunity to do that because you are surrounded by incredible people.
Yes.
And Ari, when we were in London in the back of a cab, explained the impact that she's had on forming the companies that are what we know Florida Blue today would be. And the fact that I think when Pat got there, they were like an $8 billion company, and now they're 40, and it's just insane to see the growth. Can you tell us a little bit about your normal day-to-day job and what you do?
But let me say that I've had the privilege of supporting that growth. That growth couldn't happen if you didn't have people like Pat Garrity leading that company. He's maybe one of the most visionary, dynamic leaders we've had. And he's surrounded by equally talented, executives like Darnell Smith and others. But, we decided a long time ago that we would become a health solutions company, not just sell health policies, but try to provide goods and services that help our communities be well. And so over the last 25 years, I've been with the company 31 years, but for the last 25 years, I've had the privilege of supporting our investments or acquisitions of companies that brought ancillary products and services. So home health care, for example, different things that provide a more holistic approach. And, it is a company. I wouldn't be there after 31 years if it's not a company that is absolutely on point in its mission to help Florida be healthier and have better health solutions. So.
And all of that you described, that falls under the GuideWell umbrella. Is that right?
It does now.
People know Florida Blue.
Yeah. But
maybe they don't know the connection with GuideWell. Could you kind of explain some of that?
And this is where the brilliance of Pat Garrity comes in, right? We had been thinking about a reorganization that is permitted under Florida law. It's called a mutual insurance holding company reorganization. We had contemplated that for years and years and years, but never pulled the trigger. When Pat came on board, we presented that to him, with the argument that by engaging in this reorganization, we could position Florida Blue to be more competitive with some of our for-profit competitors, be more nimble, more agile. And Pat, being the fearless leader that he is, said, let's make it happen. And so we had researched how long. There'd only been 3 other companies in the state of Florida that had gone through this, what we call MIHC reorganization, but they had been property and casualty companies. No health company that we know of had gone through that kind of a reorganization anywhere, not in Florida, but not in any other state. And the other companies that had gone through these reorganizations, it took them 2 years, about 2 years. Pat said, yep, I like it. I like this idea. Make it happen, and make it happen in 6 months.
Wow.
And so we did that. We got all of the necessary approvals within 6 months, and come January 1st, 2014, we had become a MIHC, which means that we had a new parent company, which is Guidewell Mutual Holding Corporation. And then Florida Blue was off on one side, as the insurance company that it is. And then we had on the other side, a whole host of companies that provide those ancillary services and products.
That's amazing. And then your involvement with Florida Blue and Guidewell help you just be involved with the community. I wanted to give you just a little bit of time to talk about your experience with the chamber, and as the leader this year, what your vision is for our city and where you'd like to see us go.
So, I think you could probably tell I'm just hugely passionate about Jacksonville. And, I keep thinking about all of its natural attributes, the river city. I was counting the rivers the other day: Trout, Ribault, Arlington, Ortega, St. John's, Nassau. And I know I'm missing some, but we are so rich in natural attributes, and we have so much to offer. And the organizations with which I've worked previously, the JTA and the Cultural Council, all are trying to make this a more attractive, easier place to live. What I love about the chamber, and the reason I was so honored when I was asked to be on the chamber and join the board and eventually become chair, is that the chamber is such a driver of economic growth. And I've seen you, Daniel, and the team. I've seen how passionate you are when you speak to companies that are contemplating coming here. You tell the story of Jacksonville from the perspective of somebody who loves the city. And you talk about its, the pipeline of talent that we have to offer, the geographic diversity, our healthcare systems, Mayo, Baptist, UNF. But you also talk about something really interesting that you said was, I forget the word last night, but it's basically what allows us to have a little bit more insulation from...
It's the recurvature effect.
The recurvature effect, yes. I have watched you and our current mayor in London act, and it's not Oscar performances because it's not acting.
Right.
I've seen you, with such passion talk about why us, why now. And look at what, in the last 2 years, the Holon, that German multi-billion-dollar company coming here. And I know that you've got some really amazing things in the pipeline.
We have.
But when these companies come to Jacksonville, that means jobs, that means economic growth, that means real estate, and it means the fulfillment of a promise that I think we all see in Jacksonville. So I am...
it's a great story to tell.
It's
easy to tell it, yeah.
But what I've really seen is I've seen how this chamber is unique. We've been to other cities. We've talked to other chambers, lovely people, lovely organizations. But what this chamber does in terms of its support for small businesses, for example, what Carlton does, the Women's Center, and then now with this podcast where you basically introduce not only people here, but anybody who bothers to listen to who we are.
Yeah.
I just think you should really be applauded for just constantly trying to, elevate who we are and what we do and how effectively we do it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I'm honored to serve with you.
Yeah.
So last question. We talk about jobs. You just went on about how important those are to put food on the table for hardworking families. And that's what our goal is every year. It's the number one thing we're judged by. And I know you have a great job now and have had really fun jobs. What we ask all the guests what the hardest job that they've ever had was, because TJ and I probably had some of the similar hard jobs growing up because we would work at the same place during the summers in college and
Can you imagine?
What double trouble? That's all I can think about is double trouble.
We never got fired, but came pretty
close a couple times. Yeah.
So when you think about what the extremes that you've had, what would be the hardest job or the worst job that you ever had?
It wasn't the worst job because, again, it was my honor and pleasure to serve as in that capacity. But when I was the legal officer at VP 30, legal officers help the commanding officer with with non-judicial punishments. So when our sailors get in trouble, the commanding officer has a certain range of disciplinary authority. And so they appear in front of the commanding officer, and as a legal officer, I have to present the case why this sailor.
Were you a lawyer at this point?
No,
but you were heading in that direction.
Right. Most the UCMJ is if a sailor gets in trouble, they can either choose to go to court martial, or they can be their discretion can be addressed through a non-judicial manner, which is what Captain's Mast is all about. And because we were the largest squadron on the East Coast, we would have Captain's Mast fairly frequently.
Yeah.
We were dealing with young men and women, that, just at a moment of weakness, had poor judgment.
Yeah.
And I think that was the hardest thing for me, was to see kids that had, young men and women that had such promise, that because of a moment of weakness or poor judgment, either came close to or ended their naval career. And so it just, that was hard. It's hard to, and especially those that ended up being discharged with a bad conduct discharge, that kind of follows you. And it just, that was the hard part.
That seems like that would not be something you would feel good about at the end of your day after you work. But I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and
one of my favorites for sure.
And I have to tell you, I don't think we're going to cut anything. We're keeping everything
keep it all
we talked about today. And I do want to say publicly to you how much I appreciate you and the way you look after my family, the way you care about this community, the way you work hard to fight for what's right. It just means the world to me, and I'm honored to stand side by side with you as you chair the chamber this year.
Well, I think of us as the Three Musketeers, so thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You were great.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
We love you, Ari.
Thank you.
A force for good and proud to call Jacksonville its home, GuideWell is a health solutions enterprise aimed at advancing its future of health strategy through its mission of helping people and communities achieve better health. Established in 2014, GuideWell is a not-for-profit mutual holding company focused on transforming healthcare. It is the parent to Jacksonville-based Florida Blue, the state's largest and oldest insurance company. It has roots dating back to 1944, when 4 employees formed Florida Blue Cross Blue Shield Health Insurance Plan. The plan provides access to quality, affordable care, and more than 80 years later, the company has transformed and evolved. GuideWell has grown into a more than $32 billion health solutions organization, serving more than 38 million people across the U.S., Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. GuideWell includes Florida Blue and Triple S Management, the leading health insurers in Florida and Puerto Rico, and several other subsidiaries. With a workforce of more than 18,000 employees across its family of companies, GuideWell is embracing innovation and leveraging emerging technologies to enhance member care and drive operational efficiency. The organization is investing in preventative care programs and streamlining its operations to keep costs low and quality high. Through employee and company engagement in Jacksonville and across the state, Florida Blue partners with organizations to address critical needs such as food security, mental well-being, and improving health outcomes for all Floridians. In fact, since the Florida Blue Foundation launched in 2001, it has provided millions of dollars in support to North Florida communities and organizations. Taking a member-centric approach to care, GuideWell and its people are driven by innovation, bold thinking, and a focus on people, with the goal to make healthcare work for all and for generations to come. Thanks for tuning in to Speakeasy Jacks. If you enjoyed the conversation, follow us on our social media platforms, share it with a friend, and make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.